Hello, everybody. I think my best guesstimate is that we are live for another episode of the Visto Show. It is Friday, August the 2nd. Yes, we are already in August. How the heck are you? Hopefully your day is going well. Hopefully your week went well. And if you're in Canada, or if you're in a country that has a long weekend coming up, hopefully you're excited for the long weekend that's coming up. Anyways, thank you very much for tuning in. We have a very, very busy episode today, and here's why. Number one, we're going to talk about Express Entry. We're going to talk about the busiest month in Express Entry draws in quite some time. I believe there were 9 draws in all of July. So we're going to talk about those, what we think, what we feel, what we like, what we foresee, and we'll see that. We're going to talk about a little bit of IRCC news, the two big topics on my mind today that I'm hoping you'll be chiming in on. Number one, the number of the number of study permits that have already been approved in Canada, which is they've been approving even more study permits so far this year than they did the same time last year, even though there's supposed to be a study permit cap this year. So we're going to look at some of those numbers. We're going to talk about the uptick in asylum claims in Canada, which is maybe a little bit concerning for some and kind of what it means. And then lastly, we're going to play with Canada's first AI immigration assistant. So Visto, if you saw my post earlier this week, we've launched the second version of our AI Copilot that can answer immigration questions, draft documents, all that kind of stuff. So make sure to bring your immigration questions, save them, get them ready, type them into the chat, because we're going to show you how it works. We'll answer some of your questions. If we don't have enough of your questions, I'll answer some Reddit questions or Facebook questions or whatever, and we're going to have a good time. So anyways, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. A thumbs up, subscribe always helps, but you're missing out, because if you're not watching live on LinkedIn, that is where I recommend tuning in every second Friday. We will put a link to in the description on YouTube of where you can follow me on LinkedIn so that you can tune in live and take part in the discussion. If you are tuned in live, I see we've got a handful or two of people tuning in live. Thank you very much for joining in. Please feel free to say hello. Please feel free to take part in the conversation. If you have any thoughts, questions, anything to add, please feel free. So let us jump in. I am going to share my screen and we're going to jump into topic number one, which is Express Entry. I'm going to post this link in the LinkedIn comments as well if you do want to tag along. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here are the Express Entry draws. Let's look month of June, 1 draw. Month of May, 2 draws. Month of April, 4 draws. Month of March, 4 draws. Month of July, 9 draws. So I don't know if IRCC was just, calming things down. They wanted a quiet start to 2024. I don't know what, but somebody flipped a switch in July and we've had 9 draws. I don't really know why. They don't seem to be sharing too much information. But this past week we had, number one, a big 5,000 person CEC draw, score requirement of 510. And we had a PNP draw. They invited 964 people to apply, minimum score requirement of 686. I don't really know what's happening. I'm just noticing that IRCC, so we can see the week and a half before then they did a French language draw. They did another even bigger CEC draw, right? 6,300 people with a PNP draw of 1,391. And then, a week and a half, whatever, before then, they did 2 PNP. Oh no, that's in June. They did a PNP, a trade, a health, and a French. So they're definitely promoting PNP draws, and it looks like they're starting to favor CEC draws as well. My best guess here is that they are wanting to prioritize those that are inside Canada, right? So as many of you know, and what we've talked about in previous Visto shows, which you can go watch on our YouTube channel, IRCC is facing a problem. There are millions of temporary residents in Canada, and the target is about 500,000 PRs per year. So what does it mean when you have 2.5 million temporary residents that want to become permanent residents, but every year you're only approving 500,000 permanent residents? Well, a whole bunch of people are going to lose status and their visas are going to expire, and they're either going to have to go home or get desperate and look for other means to stay or God knows what, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So I think what the government's trying to do, at least with express entry, is really focus on those inside Canada. So for those who don't know, CEC and PNP draws are quite good proxies for people being in Canada. Why? Because CEC requires that you have at least 1 year of work experience in Canada, and PNPs obviously differ from province to province, but most of them require some sort of connection to Canada or a province. So for example, having a degree in Canada, having a job offer from a Canadian company, having 1 year of work experience in Canada, etc., etc. So I think this, I don't know, but my best guess is this trend is going to continue, where they're going to continue to do a lot of PNP and CEC draws to favor the people already inside Canada. The other thing too is it's very hard to get these scores if you're outside Canada. So even if you are eligible through, the PNP, well, PNP is different because once you get approved for a PNP, you get 600 points, and anyone with a pulse has more than 86 points. So, if you get a PNP approval, you're pretty much in the clear. But for CEC, it can be tough to, or really for anything, right? Unless you've been in Canada, have a degree, et cetera, from inside Canada, it's very tough to break 500 from outside Canada. So I think this is going to continue to really favor those inside Canada. I think it makes sense because we have a heck of a lot of people inside Canada on temporary residence. So we will see what happens. We will continue to keep tabs and kind of go from there. Now, if you have any thoughts, any ideas, any insight on express entry, please feel free to throw it in the chat or the comments. But if nobody has any comments or thoughts, I'm going to take my patented sip, or as I like to call it, my segue sip, as we segue to the second part of the show. Crap! I didn't update the some of the items here on the agenda. Anyways, the second thing we're going to talk about today is two big news items. Number one is the number of study permits that have already been approved this year are outpacing last year's. This is one of many news articles. It's from the Post. I'm going to put it in the LinkedIn comments. And if you're on YouTube, you can also find these links at the bottom of the description as well. Now, here's what's interesting. So here's kind of the headline. So far in 2024, right, so this was published in July, so, a little bit more than halfway through the year, the number of study permits that have been approved is already outpacing the number of study permits that were approved in 2023. Now, why is this important? Because last year, there was no cap on the number of study permits that they wanted to approve, right? So this year, as many of us know, or if you've been watching the Visto show, and you can go back and watch older episodes closer to the beginning of 2024, IRCC put a cap on the number of study permits that they want to approve this year. And that number is, I think, 260,000? Where was it? It's somewhere in this article, so I don't have to go. 360,000. So IRCC said we're going to approve roughly 360,000 study permits this year. The problem is we're only about halfway through the year, and they've already approved 216,000. So we're over halfway, and we're outpacing the number of applications that they approved last year. So the reason for this article and these headlines is whoa. I thought we were trying to curb the number of study permits we were approving, but IRCC is still approving the crap out of these study permits. Andrew mentions IRCC forgot to factor in that it's summertime for representatives too. Working long weekends isn't fun. Well, that's a great comment, Andra. So what Andra's saying is, if IRCC had a little bit of, we'll call it, respect for their authorized representatives, right? Immigration lawyers, immigration consultants. What might have been nicer for express entry is that they did a lot of these bigger draws in the spring, right? So in April, May, June. Because what happens in Canada, it gets really nice in the summer, and a lot of people like to take time off. They like to go on vacation. They like to go away with their kids, right? Because kids are off from school. So typically in Canada, end of June and then July, August are very slow, or people try to move very slow. What happens when IRCC starts doing these massive draws in July is all the immigration lawyers and consultants now have to work overtime because more of their clients are getting express entry invites. Now, Andra, I think people like you and I know that IRCC doesn't give two craps about authorized reps, based on what they write on their website and a lot of the language that they put around how the big push for, hey, you can apply by yourselves, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it would have been great if they kind of did respect the summertime, but I'm not surprised that they didn't, unfortunately. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens with these patterns for study permits, right? They've already approved, let's do a little bit of math here. So they've already approved, what was the number? In the first 5 months of 2024, so let's say 5 months equals 216,000 approvals. I'm just going to do some I'm going to round it just so that there's easy math. And we see here that the plan was to only approve, that he expected to result in approximately 360,000 approved study permits. So 360,000. So the goal is over 12 months to approve 360,000. So if we do some very rough math here, 5 divided by 12 is about 41%, right? So 5 months is 41% of the way through, but we can see 216 divided by 360 is 60%. So they've already approved. So I'll explain what this math means in just a second for those who don't like math as much as me. So basically what this means is, if IRCC was going to approve these 360,000 applications in a linear fashion, so like roughly the same amount of approvals every single month, then what that means is that the number would be pretty linear, right? So let's say like 360 divided by 12, it's roughly 30,000 a month, right? So they would do 30,000 approvals per month, and that equals 360,000. And if they were doing that, 30 times 5 months is roughly 150,000, right? After 5 months. So the reason why this is a little bit concerning is because if you look at the map, or if you look at the math, right? So far it's been 5 months. They've approved 216,000. This is 41% of their budget for the year already. Or sorry, this is 60%. This is 60% of the 360,000 that they were supposed to approve. So what I'm trying to say here, and I'm confusing this way too much, I didn't have to go this kind of in depth, is if they were going to do this in a linear fashion, they would have approved roughly around 150,000 after 5 months, but they've already approved 216,000. So they're like 20% ahead of schedule. So what does this mean? Does this mean they're going to, if they hit the 100% quota by September, are you just crap out of luck and they're just not going to process any study permit applications after that? Or does this mean that anyone that they approve after that are only students that can come next year? Now, one of my thinkings here is that they are a little bit front-loaded because, as many of us know, the biggest intake in Canada is September, right? Most students are coming to start school in September. So one of my thoughts is, well, maybe they're approving more of this 360,000 in the first 6 months because a lot of these students are aiming to come study in September. And so they're going to be approving a lot more in the first half of the year, and they're going to be approving a lot less in the second half of the year. That's my guess. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if we have any explanation from IRCC or not. So anyways, time will tell. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this news piece and see, okay, after 8 months, for example, how does it look, right? After 7, after 8, after 10 months, is IRCC staying on path, or are they going to way overshoot this 360,000? It'll be interesting to see. So yeah, and then there's a little point here in the article. In 2023, Canada let in a record 800,000 non-permanent residents, such as students and temporary foreign workers, bringing to 2.6 million. This English isn't very good. Bringing to 2.6 million the number of non-permanent residents in the country. So as of January 1st of this year, there were 2.6 million non-permanent residents. So this goes to my earlier point, right? Where if we have, let's bring up my lovely paint again. If we have 2.6 million non-permanent residents in Canada, and every year we're approving roughly 500,000 PRs, what's going to happen when 2.1 million of them don't get PR this year? Now, not all of their permits are expiring right away, but maybe half of them are expiring within 1 year. So what are the 1.05 million non-PRs going to do with their expiring permit? So anyways, I think it could get a little bit ugly, but as they say, time will tell. So if you have any thoughts, questions on any of that, please let me know. The other big news item that I wanted to cover is that Canada, within the last year or two, has seen a huge uptick in asylum claims. Now, an asylum claim is basically, well, here, let's just read the official stuff. Seeking asylum is a fundamental human right enshrined in the Bluebity Blue. Asylum seekers are individuals who have fled their country due to fear of persecution on the grounds of their race, religion, nationality, etc., in a particular social group, and whose request for protection by the host country has yet to be processed. So what this means, in not so many words and less elegantly, someone has to flee their country, and they come into a country like Canada, and they claim asylum, right? And this is a formal legal process that they can go through to, claim refugee or, asylum status. Now, why is this starting to make the news? Because look at this chart, right? So basically, this is asylum claims in Canada from 2000 to 2023. I'm going to put a link to this in the comments. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can follow along with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll find it in the description. Now, so look at this. This is crazy, right? So roughly in 2000, there were 37,000 claimants. We go 10 years, 23,000 claimants. We go another 10 years, 23,000 claimants, right? There was a little uptick here before COVID. Obviously, the numbers came down during COVID because you couldn't travel. And then in 2022, it spikes a little to 91,000. And then in 2023, it spikes even more to 144,000 people. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that there are way more people legitimately fleeing persecution in their home country? Or does this mean, to the point that we were just talking about before, that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of non-permanent residents who are inside Canada, and they came as a worker or a student or a visitor, and they have no other option, so they're just filing asylum claims? If you talk to certain people, they will tell you that that is absolutely the case. Now, I just want to make this very clear. I am not saying that all asylum claims are not genuine. I'm not saying that at all. There is probably tens of that, like of this 140,000, probably tens of thousands of them are legitimate. But I also bet, from what I'm hearing from people in the industry, from regulated immigration consultants and lawyers, is that tens of thousands of people are claiming asylum in Canada when they shouldn't. And here's why it's a problem. Number one, it clogs up the system for genuine asylum claimers, right? Somebody's fleeing their home country from persecution and conflict and human rights violations and God knows what. And they legitimately deserve their day in court to claim asylum in Canada. If there's tens of thousands of non-genuine asylum applicants, the courts are backed up, the whole system is backed up, the government is backed up, and those genuine claims are now being delayed and or won't be heard as quickly. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that the government, which really means the Canadian taxpayers, are paying for this, right? Because what happens when you claim asylum in Canada, in a lot of cases, I don't know the formal process, I'm not an asylum expert, but for example, does it mention it here? I don't know exactly what happens. Let me ask Copilot. What expenses are covered by the government for someone who claims asylum inside Canada? Please excuse my lack of knowledge because I never did refugee or asylum type work back when I was practicing. But from my understanding, when you claim asylum, you then may be eligible for a lot of things to be provided by the government. Housing, food, et cetera, et cetera. So not only are the illegitimate asylum claimants clogging up the system, which means that if you're a genuine asylum seeker, it makes your process way harder, but now they're basically, taking our tax dollars to cover their hotel rooms and stuff like that. So individuals who claim, let me make this a little bit bigger here. Individuals who claim asylum inside Canada, referred to as refugee claimants, do not receive direct financial support for their living expenses in the same way that government-assisted refugees do. However, refugee claimants may be eligible for certain types of assistance depending on their situation in the province, etc. Here are some forms of assistance. So the interim federal health program, refugee claimants are eligible for which provides limited temporary coverage of health care. Refugee claimants and certain other groups, this includes basic healthcare services as well as medication and vaccine. Provincial and territorial social assistance may be eligible for programs by the province where they live. These programs can include for basic needs such as food, shelter, and clothing, as well as other support. Work and study permits. Refugee claimants are exempt from paying fees for work and study permits, which can allow them to work, blah, 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 blah. Community and non-governmental, various community organizations and NGOs provide support to refugee claimants, which may include finding housing, accessing food banks, etc. Refugee claimants are responsible for their own living expenses while their claim is being processed unless they receive support from community organizations. Okay. So, because part of what I'd read in the news is that hotels are over flooded because of refugee claimants, and the government is paying to have, I guess maybe for some, but not all. If anybody has any more details on how that looks, please feel free to let me know in the chat. But basically what's happening here is you have a huge, and I think the numbers are even higher in 2024, we're on pace to break this. What I'm hearing from the ground level is that you actually have shady dealers inside Canada and outside Canada who are telling people to apply for something like a TRV or a study permit, land in Canada, and then claim asylum, right? Which basically means they're doing what they shouldn't be doing, right? So this is anecdotal, but I mean the data shows, right? How come over 20 years, up until 2022, there was never more than 64,000 asylum claims in Canada? And then in 2022, it went up to 91,000. In 2023, it ballooned to 144,000. And from what I hear in 2023, and in 2024, I think we're going to surpass that. So that it can be a huge problem, right? I only touched on a few reasons why it's concerning. Number one, it clogs up the system for genuine claimants. Number two, it's going to cost the government, aka the taxpayers, a whole lot of money. Number three, it kind of undermines the system. So anyways, another problem that we'll have to, hope that IRCC can kind of figure out, which I think we all know how that might go, unfortunately. Anyways, if you have any thoughts, questions, ideas, feel free to put them in the chat or the comments. Always interested to hear what other folks are thinking along those lines. So, excuse me, lastly, let me take another sip of water here. Number one, definitely check out the, I had a few episodes go live for the CIPP, Canadian Immigration Pros podcast. If you're not already subscribed to that, I highly recommend it. I'm going to stick this link below as well. Had some really interesting episodes recently. So on CIPP, what I do is I interview other regulated Canadian immigration professionals, so consultants and lawyers, and we talk about a wide variety of topics. So you can find it on your favorite podcast platform if you want to listen, and you can also watch the videos if you'd prefer as well on YouTube. Most recent episodes, very interesting. Number 1, spousal sponsorship appeals and then deferral of removals with Daniel Kingwell. He is a very experienced and much smarter than I lawyer who's basically spent the last 20 plus years on appeals, litigation, removal orders, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested or experienced with or looking to apply for spousal sponsorship, or worried about things like removal orders, or just want to know how that works, I would highly recommend watching or listening to that episode. And then I also had a really good episode about 2 weeks ago with Arshdeep. She has been doing a lot of work with AIP, the Atlantic Immigration Program, and PNPs on the East Coast. These are becoming very popular because, as we talked about earlier, it's becoming very difficult now to get permanent residence through express entry. So more people are looking for options like AIP, PNPs, stuff like that. And I asked her some pretty good questions, I think. I'm a little biased, but I asked her some questions on, how those programs work, tips, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, definitely give those a watch or a listen. The link is, did I post the link? Yeah. The link is in the chat if you're on LinkedIn. The link will be in the description below if you are watching on the tube of yous. And now, without further ado, we will get into, oh wait, I wasn't sharing my screen. Crap. Here's the screen I was trying to share. Anyways, this is the website. You click on the button, and I was showing, here's the episode with Daniel, here's the episode with Arshdeep. But yeah, at the link, you can find the YouTube link here, and then you can listen it on all of these lovely platforms as well. So that's it for that. Lastly, but not leastly, let's jump in to the Visto AI Copilot. Now, what the heck is an AI Copilot, you might be asking? Good question. If you've ever used something like ChatGPT or Claude or Cloud or however you pronounce it, or Gemini or the Microsoft version, what we've built is a custom Copilot that can answer pretty much almost any immigration question. And earlier this week, we launched a second version of it, making it even better. We improved the algorithm. We added way more content. We added sourcing, right? So you can see at the bottom of every answer, not only do we provide an answer, we then include a link to the government website, right? So it can kind of get you started to confirm the information, do a deeper dive, anything like that. So what I wanted to do here is show you guys some examples of how it works and answer some questions. So if you have any immigration questions that you're curious about, or if you're a immigration professional and you're struggling with a research question right now, or if you're an aspiring immigrant and you're looking for help, please feel free to throw your questions in the chat. I'll show you a few that I've run with recently. So for example, someone was asking about how adoption works, right, related to immigration, and how it might affect if you're inside or outside Canada. So pretty lengthy response here from the Copilot, including a link as well. You can ask it a lot of the basics, right? So like, what are the eligibility criteria for the Canadian Experience class? And it just kind of spits out the information with links to the IRCC website, so you can go confirm. If my client is 27 and has a master's degree and a CLB 8 and 5 years of work experience, what is their express entry score, right? So you can use it to calculate express entry score. It gives it the points kind of broken down by section. You can ask for PNPs, right? What are their Ontario PNP options if they're living in Toronto? And it'll start spitting out PNP suggestions. So right now we have Ontario, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and we'll probably be adding more soon as well. And we have a whole bunch of other stuff too, right? So, refugee questions. In this case, I asked it to summarize something. So for example, I had a whole, like, the AI spit out an answer for me, but this is like really long and complex. So I said, hey, can you just like summarize that into an email so I can send it to my client? And the AI will summarize information, and you can even have it to like make it into the format of an email or a blog post or anything like that as well. So anyways, let me look up a few questions. What is the document checklist for the startup visa? Right, pretty basic, but it can do a whole lot of stuff. Let me check up. I'm gonna check. I'm gonna go into the Canadian immigration subreddit, and maybe what I'll do is I'll pull a few questions from there. What's it called? I think it's r/Immigration Canada. So if you're not already, definitely a good subreddit. If you are or are not a Reddit fan, I definitely highly recommend it. Let's see here. Let me pull it up. Whoa, this is a long situation. Let me find some. The problem here, which is really sad, is there's like a lot of Reddit threads. So everything I talked about earlier, right, about how like people are going to struggle to convert to PR, you're seeing a lot of it play out on Reddit, right? Need advice what to prepare because they're leaving. Bridging open work permit with PNP non-EE. Let's see what this question asks and see if it's a good idea. I recently got nominated by the OIMP. I used the nomination to apply through the PR portal non-EE. In this case, do I still need to wait for PR AOR to apply for a bridging open work permit? Let's ask the question. Let's see what the Copilot has to say. So I'm going to start a new chat, and I'm going to stick in the question. The other thing I'll quickly point out is we do have a free trial now for the Copilot as well. So if you are a Canadian immigration professional and you want to give it a try, it'll basically help you answer your Canadian immigration questions super fast. So I'm going to link to this in the comments or the description below. You can watch a video of me showing you how it's used, even though you're watching a video right now of me showing you how it's used. You can read a little bit more about what it can help you do. You can see the pricing, but you can also get started for free with the trial. So I'm going to put the link in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description as well. And let's see what we have here. As a nominee, blue, you do not need to wait for an AOR of your permanent residence application to apply for a bridging open work permit. However, you must meet specific eligibility criteria to apply for a bridging open work permit. As a provincial nominee, you are eligible for a bridging open work permit only if you have provided a copy of the nomination letter issued by the nominating province, and this letter indicates that your employment is unrestricted, and you have selected open work permit on your application form. Additionally, for non-express entry PNP applicants, you must have received a positive eligibility assessment on your non-express entry application for permanent residence. The positive eligibility assessment is considered to be made once the status of the eligibility field in GCMS is set to passed for applications received on or after January 2015. So anyways, kind of cool, because you might spend a lot of time researching this answer. Let me see. Okay, so there hasn't been really like a great answer. So I might even post this answer on Reddit. So let me keep that one open. Need help with a medical exam. Let's see if this is a... And if you guys have any questions, thoughts, feedback, by all means. Everything but the medical exam is finished, but how do I get one and what are they? I couldn't find much information on the website. I mean, medical's pretty straightforward, but let's help this fine person out anyways. I'm going to start a new chat so I can keep these organized. So I think you guys get the gist of it, right? You type in questions, it gives you answers pretty damn fast, and it also links to the government websites. And that's really important because, number one, we always want to make sure that we're double checking, right? And number two, we always want to make sure that it's coming from the right sources and stuff like that. So anyways, just wanted to show you guys how that works. If you have any questions about it, or if you want to, did they mention? Oh wow, I've been invited to apply. So I guess I might want to just confirm. Oh, this says work permit. Because, see, this is a case where we have to be careful with AI. I didn't add this in. It says, I've been invited to apply. But he's clicked off, or he or she has clicked off work permit. So what I should have done in the Copilot is mentioned, I've been invited to apply for my work permit. But this is kind of conflicting because if I'm so the Copilot answered it assuming that it was for express entry, right? Because that's kind of like the most popular application to be invited to apply for. But this person clicked off work permit. But you don't really get invited to apply for your average work permit. Maybe this is through like IEC or something like that. So I might ask a follow-up question. Or, for example, with the Copilot, what I might do is create a new chat and put in, I've been invited to apply for a work permit. Oops, I didn't need the capital. And this will clarify. So the most important thing to know about using AI right now, this goes for really any AI, is the output is really only as good as the input, right? So the more specific you can be, the more accurate you can be, the more details you can provide, the better the output will be, right? So we can see here, I didn't mention what program, and it assumed express entry. Now, if I was reading this question, I would have assumed express entry as well, right? But they happen to click off work permit. So I guess there's like a subtitle or a subheading that you can select on Reddit, and I didn't notice that. And so now it's giving me a version that's work permit friendly. So anyways, kind of cool. Good to notice and keep in mind as well. I think those are kind of the key things that I wanted to cover on the show today. Hopefully you found that helpful in terms of what do we cover today? Number one, the express entry draws and what we think might happen next. Number two is some big news articles, right? We talked about how IRCC is approving study permits way ahead of pace, about 20% ahead of the pace that we thought they would be at. The huge increase in asylum claims and why it might be a problem. And we just talked about the Canadian Immigration Pros podcast and the new AI Copilot that you can try for free at the link below. So that is going to be it for me. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, especially those who stuck around live on LinkedIn. Hopefully you enjoyed and found it helpful. Thanks to you if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not already, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, because if you do miss our LinkedIn Live, we post all of these on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube but you want to tune into the next one live, make sure you're following me on LinkedIn, because that's where I go live every second Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern. So anyways, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about Visto or the Copilot, make sure to go to Visto.ai, Visto.ai, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.